I'm so excited. Today is March 8th, and we are commemorating International Women's Day. We're celebrating us, our place in society, women's civil rights, gender equality, and I can't think of a better person to talk to than Fabian Dattner, who is the co-founder and CEO of Homeward Bound, a project I'm obsessed with, and she'll tell us a little bit more in a second. First, I want to introduce her because she is globally recognized. She's an award-winning leadership expert. She's an activist for women and a speaker, an author, and a facilitator, and she is particularly interested in ethical and environmental issues, as am I, and the role of women in building a sustainable future. So Fabian, thank you so much for I could go on the list of this woman. She's basically, she was listed in the Financial Review of top 100 women of influence, but I could go on. I want to talk to you more than anything. I'm so happy that you're here, Fabian. How are you?
I'm equally excited to be here and a little in awe. And I think the funniest thing is that both of us have colds. So how committed are we to the conversation that we've come into this? I've taken Codral with pseudoephedrine, and you've taken something else, and we are here, and that's what women do.
Yes, exactly. I've had 3 days of a fever for some reason, but today I had an IV fluid and I am alive and we're talking, and now, like you said, you have a flu, but you're right. That's what brings us together. Look at us, like in the face of our body's adversity, we are showing up. So happy International Women's Day, Fabian, first of all.
Yeah, and a big hug to you and all your listeners. It's such an important day, and I send out my love to all the women who are listening and the men who support them. I think it's a day, I'm not sure we're commemorating. I always think when we're commemorating someone's died, but I think we're just starting. The next 100 years is our time. So my love to everybody.
Yes, and like you said, you know, there's still a lot of work to do, you know, but I think we're definitely mobilizing and change is happening. For example, you know, I'd love to hear, you know, people that don't know about your project, Homeward Bound, and the role that it plays in society and its mission, because it's so important how you've focused it around women and leadership, and I'd love to hear, just for people who have no idea about it, like, can you just give us a little bit of a splash of it?
I will most definitely give you a little splash, but because it's International Women's Day, I would also like to share with you, if I can, how it started, because sometimes we look at big ideas, and as I was reading about you, Karla, and understanding the journey you went on and that hideous moment when you made the brave move to Los Angeles, of all the scrutiny you were under, and then what it was like to land apart. My journey with Homeward Bound, I promise, hand on my heart, started with a literal dream in October of 2015. So I'm in bed in Australia with my beautiful husband, who sleeps very deeply, and I had a dream. I was on a ship in Antarctica. I could see Antarctica through the windows, and in front of me were a whole lot of women, and I recognized them, and they were on chairs and on the floor, and they were working and talking, and I knew instantly they were scientists, and I was helping them to help shape the world. And to my left was a banner, Homeward Bound, and I knew what it meant. And in the dream, for me, Homeward Bound was sometimes, to know what matters, you have to do what you did when you stepped across from Mexico to Los Angeles. You have to go to something that's frightening and unknown in order to know what you will fight for and defend. And Homeward Bound was, we have to leave what's safe and secure to know when we come back that it matters to us. I knew behind us we were making a film about leadership in the world, and there was a film crew, and all of that manifested in the following 2 years. And it manifested not because I did something miraculous. I had one conversation, and that one conversation led to 2 conversations that led to 3, which led to more people saying we like the idea, to finally getting someone endorse us who mattered. So Homeward Bound now is a global initiative to elevate the visibility of women leading with a STEM background: science, technology, engineering, maths, medicine. And it's a leadership program on the ground, and then it's nearly a month in Antarctica together. That's 100 women on a ship in the most remote part of the world with no comms home. And we collaborate to work out how we're going to help build a sustainable future. And all the women are selected because, like you, they care deeply about the future, and we're stronger together. So we've reached 56 nationalities, 46 sciences. I was the donor CEO for the first 7 years, and I stepped out of that. We now have a paid CEO. It's a fully fledged not-for-profit, and I'm on the board, and I lead an amazing thing called Basara, which I can tell you about a bit later, in Homeward Bound. So yes, that's it in a nutshell, everybody.
Yes, that's just, I mean, it's so incredible. I really connect when you say that you had one conversation that then became two conversations, because for me, whenever I have an idea about, it took me 10 years to produce a movie recently. It's called Dive, in Spanish, La Caída. And it all started with one conversation that I had with someone who not only believed me and sort of saw the vision, like what you're saying, but also I think I really believe strongly that, we can't do anything alone, first of all. Second of all, my strengths are, I have strengths and weaknesses. And every single person that I ended up putting in the team that I think this relates to a lot of the work that you do, is someone who then counterbalances my weaknesses and has those strengths, and sort of, we help each other in collaboration. And that's how then a project's so hard as, taking 100 women to Antarctica. I know you started with 40 and then it became 100, and now you're going to take more women, and but it all starts with that first person that you have a conversation with. And I just hope that people hear, whenever someone comes to you with an idea, how important you are as the listener to that idea, to also, breathe hope into that person, and to be, to not squash that idea, because I know that a lot of people grow up with parents or friends that don't know better, and they just squash this little fire that people have of an idea. And little did we know, your idea was so out there, and yet it happened. My idea was also very, very different to what people had sort of put me in the box of what I did, and so it was hard for them to envision and to see. But I think I just wanted to touch upon what you said, which is, the speaking, the conversations, and how important those conversations are.
So I think you've touched on something that is special about women, because when a man who's an entrepreneur or a social entrepreneur or a filmmaker has an idea, it's his idea, and he will look for people who have the skill to help realize the idea. I don't know how well our audience can see your hands, but what your hands were doing, your mouth was struggling to describe, and your hands said these one-on-one conversations, and you put your hands together and your hands turn into something. That's what happens when you listen and include. And I think at our best, women are collaborative, they're inclusive, and they're legacy-minded. And ideas born in that space may not have the flash and the dazzle and the pizzazz and possibly the money that ideas driven by an individual have, but they last and they become something bigger, and we give it to many. And it's the birthplace of initiatives globally like Barefoot Engineers, which is all women. It's grandmothers putting up solar lighting, illiterate grandmothers putting up solar lighting and maintaining it. Women who do it for others rather than for self. And I think that you showed it in your hands. And all the work I do tells me over and over and over that, women and men are a Venn diagram. There's a lot about us that's similar. But the outside of the Venn diagram describes some important differences, and I think that's one of them.
Yeah, I I agree. And thank you for bringing that up I'm very, they say us Latins and Mexicans, we talk a lot with our hands. So if I can't express myself with my words, I'll definitely be using my hands. But so I think we share the same, I think, feeling and theme as well of, constantly overcoming barriers as women, especially, like you were saying, how hard it is as women to be in STEM. What are the barriers that you overcame to sort of enter into that world of leadership? And I can't even imagine what that was. If you have, any examples, or if you have any things that you think you want to share.
Yes, I do. And at this point, given we've got a lot of women listening in, if women want to post questions or share stories online, we're encouraging you to do, because this is really a conversation between KARLA and myself, but also with you all. I'm very privileged, and not privileged just in education or what I've had in my life. I'm mostly privileged because of the parenting I had, and I always believed I could be whatever I wanted to be. And my father encouraged that, and my mother encouraged that. And it wasn't until I was possibly near your age, and I'm a lot older than you, but when I got to your age, I started to lift my head up from the feeding bin and look around and realize what happened for me does not happen for many, even most women. So my journey for myself is the impediments I faced, I wasn't so bowed by. So, for instance, many of you may know Rolf Harris, the Australian comedian who's serving time in prison. What he did to many other women, he also did to me on an aeroplane. But I was of an age and with a support community that enabled me to process that and turn it into something, for most part, that was funny. And until he was brought to justice, I didn't fully appreciate how harmful that sort of behaviour is to a lot of women. I think when I was confronted with inappropriate behaviour on the part of others, I felt able to deal with it and retain who I was. And then I started to see women who it was soul destroying for. So my life's work now is to recognise I was one of the lucky ones, and I feel I have a very big duty of care to do what I can to support other stories that don't get heard. And in STEM, I've been quite stunned at how unsafe so many women feel. And it's things that have happened in laboratories. It's things that have happened with their work being really, I would call it stolen, or where they're made to serve a more senior academic with no recognition for what they do. And they come to believe the only way to survive is to be hyper competitive or hyper perfectionistic. And so the story goes on and on. What about for you?
So just listening to you, I'm even jotting down some thoughts because like you said, I'm also of a privileged upbringing where my parents, and my dad especially, was very much of the mind of whatever it is that you think you want to do, you can do. And I know that not only the color of my skin, growing up in Mexico, my parents were from the upper middle class. And so obviously that the world of opportunities that were open for me are not the case for many, if not the majority of women, in Mexico. Not only race-wise, the color of their skin, but also women that are in countries that have, political, or they're in migration, or queer women, or, there's so many other women that face much more adversity, like you're saying, of the women that, that was soul crushing to. There's definitely a huge component about my work, and I know your work is being, being there for those women and sort of opening up the space for them to also share their experiences, and for us to collaborate, and for us to help them also have and have the potential and the space to grow professionally, but also holistically. I know that you're a huge component on all of our facets, not only working, but I know you talk a lot about balance and being well, and that's how we can be good leaders, is by being people who are taking care of themselves and exercising and eating and sleeping, and also, you know, people who are working, but not only, you know, that can't be the only part of our lives. And so all those things that I really connect with, that is a lot about what you talk about, is how we can be, you know, sort of whole leaders. I think something interesting as well that you've said in the past is how a lot of people have so many skills, but we're lacking in the skills of leadership. You know, we're all going to school and we're getting all these, you know, accolades. And I noticed that a lot when, you know, producing this movie and sort of stepping into a leadership role, is I actually didn't know what, you know, being a leader meant, and how I could, you know, impact, and how much my position impacted everybody else where I was, you know. So I think that's also something very important for women in leadership roles, is to know that, you know, we're here to sort of grow in that position as well.
Leadership, like everything else, is a skill, and you will know it when you're working for a director, or a film is under the guidance of a producer. A great director and a great producer create a great sense of belonging amongst the cast, amongst all the technical support, the lighting, you know, the grip. Everyone feels they have a part and is respected and seen and heard. But a director who's got an attack of gigantism and carries on like a pork chop, or a producer who's relentless about the costs, makes the whole set miserable. And an actor who gets too big for their boots makes the other actors feel miserable. So good leadership at all levels, doesn't matter if you're in a senior role or not, is a state of mind. It's my recognition that how I behave today has an impact on another human being. And given even your beautiful self, who you look really exquisite and young, even though you feel sick, and your audience, I'm going to assume no one in the audience is probably under the age of 20. Probably. Would that be true?
Yeah,
let's say, for argument's sake. And so I then say to everyone, don't forget that 80 years from now, 90 years from now, everyone will be dead. So add value in life, give kindness. And I think that is a much underestimated skill in leadership, and certainly one of my guiding principles. And it's also my role in the work I do with women in the Dattner group, which is, you know, where I earn my money, is everyone has a place. And in leadership, the more you know how to include and listen and change your own behaviour, the better everything will be. The faster you get outcomes, the more robust they are. And women in particular have to be very careful not to over-rely on expert knowledge. Who we are and how we behave and how we think and feel is more important than what we know.
That's very interesting. I want to hear more on that. So is that, you know, is that based on your experience or research that shows basically like it's more about, because I agree, I've been on sets where the director or like you said, the producer, or even other actors and their ways of being, let alone their talent for what they're doing, it's their ways of being affect and are so toxic, and they affect me to the core, that they then don't produce the best work in me, and they produce a really toxic work environment. And so that's when I've seen that, you know, at the beginning of my career, I knew that is the last thing I want to do when I'm in the leadership, you know, when I'm the number one on the call sheet, and when I'm the director, when I'm the producer, that's the last thing. I want to make everyone feel like they can fail, you know, like perfectionism is not wanted here, because failing is where I've found the most growth, the most special takes, you know, is when people don't have the fear to just fall flat on their face. And then people who feel like they are, even if they have the smallest part in the film, that they're needed, that they're seen, that they're, you know, that they're included in the conversation, that they're important. And I think that for me has helped, you know, having the opposite and growing up and seeing the opposite has helped me know what I want to be when I'm, you know, when I'm in those in those positions. But yeah.
Yes, it's not easy. It's not easy to lead and sustain that, as I, was to learn in Homeward Bound, and I've seen it in, I have 3 big buckets of work that I do. Homeward Bound is now standing on its own feet and is a not-for-profit, but I still work with transformational change in communities, organisations, extensive work with leaders and extensive work coaching, and a lot of work with women. And I think that we have to recognise that the world we're in has changed beyond recognition, and the leadership practice that got us here is not enough to get us where we all need to go. So if we can't change, if we can't adapt, if we can't begin to respect people, we won't be fast on our feet. We won't be agile. We'll continue to make mistakes that will cost us all big chunks of our future. It might be a nice question to ask our audience if you've experienced yourselves toxic leadership. If anyone wants to put a comment in the chat about, yes, I have, and here's where. We're watching the chat, and you can tell us where you've seen or experienced toxic leadership. Can I ask you, if you could wave a magic wand, which would you rather do, produce, direct, or act? Or all 3?
I think all 3. I was gonna say all 3. I think I've really enjoyed. I haven't directed yet. That's still one that is on the books. So, but I've enjoyed. Right now, there's a project that is in development. I'm developing. I bought the rights to a play that I really liked, and I want to make it into a movie. And that so I would be directing this movie, and I've liked envisioning it in my head. But like you said, it's so important, the team that I put around me to sort of help craft, because for a film, it's on the call sheet, there's 150 people, if not more, that are helping with every single detail. And it's so important to give people the liberty to also to not micromanage, and to give them the liberty to also create and bring, their ideas. And what you said, I think, is so important with with the skills changing. Right now, I'm looking for kindergartens for my 4-year-old, 4.5-year-old, and they told us that every job that she'll have when she's in the workforce doesn't, like 70% of the jobs don't exist. They don't exist yet. So what is this academic race to nothing? There's no job. What's important is her personhood, her decision making, her choosing challenge, her emotional intelligence. All these leadership qualities that you're talking about are what is are the legacy that we're going to continue.
Of course,
giving.
Of course. And doesn't a 4-year-old test that, Karla?
100%. I mean,
is it a little boy or a little girl?
It's a girl. She's a girl.
What's her name?
Gianna.
Yeah. And is she like mom or dad?
She's like me. Oh yeah. She is a firecracker. She's like me. She's definitely in the leaders. She loves being a leader, a director. I see she's like a director already. And she's someone who, she's actually someone who's really helped me sort of hone in on like what we're saying and the love and what we're giving to the world that's coming after, because sometimes it's hard to come out of our, what did you call it? Our feeding bowls, just like thinking about yourself. And it's been really sort of eye-opening to think about the future in that way. And that's why, just seeing the challenges that I've had and what I want to have, what motivates me is to change the world so that, so that it's a better place for them, for the next generation. And so that we can, I guess, leave it not as bad as we got it.
Of all the thousands of women I've worked with, thousands and thousands of women, I would say 90% of them want that. They want to leave the world a better, safer place. And here's a very interesting thing. And on International Women's Day, I want women to know you don't have to do big things. It's who you are is already enough. You are enough, actually, and your footprint on the world is enough. The challenge is we are in a world that doesn't see it. Our world does not see anywhere near the extent of the gift women bring. And I've worked with thousands and thousands of men, but if I ask men, what's important to you, they'll say things like, and it's good, they'll say providing for my family, making sure that I'm able to give the best of life to my family, to have the experience of achieving in my career, to make sure the goals I set for myself I get to. And women will go, well, I really want to make sure other people are okay. I want to help other people. I want to make sure the world is a better place. And I have to force women to say, yes, but what do you want? I feel a bit squirmy when I answer that. I don't want to talk about what I want. I want to talk about what Karla wants. What do you want, Karla? And so, children are a great leveler. This little person in your life, what a life-changing experience. Can I ask you, what does your husband do?
He recently retired, but he retired in July, but he was working for JP Morgan for 18 years. He was a credit risk managing director for the international he was basically, because I met him in Mexico City, he was in JP Morgan in Mexico City, and he was opening Mexico City. And then it sort of became, Asia, and so he was sort of the director of the international credit risk management team in JP Morgan. But we were both working so many hours, and my job is my passion, and he was sort of ready to just take a step back, and I think it was the year of resignation, wasn't it, for COVID? But I think we that was in last July, so he's so he's enjoying having a space, but also excited to to see where he's going to grow next, and where he's going to sort of, like you said, men want to be providers and all of that. So it's a little bit of a shake. It's definitely shaken him, not having like that structure. But it's like an exciting time to see what, what this second half of his life can bring.
And isn't it interesting, as a strong and profiled woman, how you manage those relationships? I think often for women, we never talk about how we work life with our loved ones. And I think if for strong women or successful women, it doesn't actually matter how strong or successful we are. If we're in a good marriage, we're always conscious of our partner as an equal, our partner as someone we love and respect and we want to nurture. And there are so few role models in our society for women whose careers take off and men who support them. There's almost no role model for that. What's your thoughts on that?
That's true. That's very true. I'll tell you what, it's been crazy to see the reaction of my family. They just don't, it's definitely not, in Mexican society, it's a very, machista society where I had to let go of a lot of boyfriends who didn't want me to grow. They didn't want me to grow. They didn't want me to do what I do. And I smelt that a mile away. And I thought, well, I studied my career. How come you can continue your career and I can't continue mine? And so with my husband, Marshall, he was incredibly just different in that way. I wasn't a possession to have. I wasn't a medal to put on. And when I found that, and I think that's why, we're still able to be together. It's been in June, it'll be 9 years of being married. I'm sure you've been married longer, but I think that I don't have any role models where the female, I don't have any friends. So it's been hard. Yeah, it's definitely been hard because I don't have that to look up to or to talk. I don't have it in my peripheral vision where I can be like, oh, look, this is normal. You're okay. You're going to be okay.
Ta-da! I'm in your life now, Karla. I've been married for 38 years And my life is consumed with, like you, making the world a better place. I'm very clear about where my contribution is. I know what my body of knowledge is. And as an older woman, I have nothing but a big heart and a will to help people like you. And I think that what has sustained the marriage I have with my very loved Ken, and we've been together for nearly 39 years,
Wow.
He is a philosopher, he's a bonsai master, and he's an artist. So he spends his day going, should the twig move this way or that way? And I've done 180 emails, 3 speaking engagements, 2 contracts, and challenged a global leader to consider being more enlightened in their approach. I think it goes that way. There you go. Is it great? That's what it is to be a woman. We do shit, let's face it. And I think that's wonderful, but we love our partner. He and I fell in love crazy quickly. He's the most...
Oh, no. No, I was so in... We lost her. Let me see. Let's see if we can get her back. I want to hear that story. Ike, do you know what happened? Oh, there you are.
Oh my God, I just hit the disconnect button. I'm so sorry.
I needed my popcorn for this story, and then you just cut off, and I was like, no. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh my God, I am technically moronic. I'm very brilliant in one area and stupid in lots of others.
Got back on, you did it. So wait, what was the story you were telling me about your
husband? I was just about to tell you about my husband. We fell in love or lust, I'm not sure which, but it was a crazy, wild love affair, and it has been ever since. And I wanted to be out in the world making a difference. He brings this deep, rich, reflective space. We've had a conversation that hasn't stopped for 38 years, rich intellectual conversation about the world. We've never cramped each other's space. But here's the trick of it. We don't try and change our men. We try and let them be who they need to be without feeling compromised ourselves. And I think 2 things happen for women in relationships. One is somehow we start to want our men to be something more or different. And we think we're the change makers. And the other is the reverse of that. We let ourselves be changed by. And I think when you really love someone, then you will let them be who they need to be, and they'll let you be who you need to be, and you support that. So that, and I think lots of education on how to have difficult conversations, because anything in a marriage we don't talk about is something we will struggle with.
That's so interesting, because I feel like there's a lot of shame within the Latin communities with women that I've had approach me, where a lot of shame that women feel when they're moms, and that, you know, they really want to work, but they feel shame, and they don't feel, there's just so much, there's so much more work to do in that space for Latin women to feel like they have also the ability to dream and to, you know, and to do work, even if it's not paid. It's not about money, or, you know, it's about having their, like you said, their space, as a woman, and not only a wife or a mother, you know. And I think that's so important. And it's so funny, because I think that men would actually really, if they had the chance, they would actually prefer I think there's just a lot of fear, you know, there's a lot of fear that moves the way that the society is, you know, works in terms of men and women, you know, and gender roles. And I think that that's definitely a lot of barriers that Latin women face, and they also face in the workplace where they're having to not only be the mothers, be the cleaners, be the cooks, be the wives, be the, be all of it and work. And so then it becomes this exhausting thing for them where they're not sharing the household chores with the men. And even though they're working, it's still like the men's, they don't think that it's their role to do any of the child.
Right, 100% right. 100% right. And, we Homeward Bound, we've had a lot of women, thanks to Acciona's amazing sponsorship of the project, lots of women from Latin American countries. And I'm very conscious of all those things. And if I'm really honest, an undercurrent of frustration, possibly for men living in that world as well. And it translates into potentially more violence against women than we should be ever tolerating. And the tragedy is that when women have the freedom to become, they always take the community with them. So it is always better for men and women if women have the chance to become. They won't compete. They won't, on the whole, they won't compete. They won't diminish. They'll help all of us feel more able. And I've seen that in so many contexts. But it's true here. And, we think it's hard in LATAM, but it's awful in the Yemen or in Afghanistan. And they're the same women, these incredibly smart, capable, loving, collaborative, legacy-minded women. So the worst part of diminishing a woman is you are throwing away a part of your future. You're throwing away a part of your future. And so when you listen to a woman, you hold her story in your hands like the most precious metal you will ever find. Listen to her, give her space. So yes, there are cultures around the world that's an issue with, and it's much more than any of us would wish.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure that within Homeward Bound, you've probably had all these conversations with all those hundreds of women on all the stereotypes. I can't even imagine the stereotypes that the women scientists have had to endure. I know that in my career, I was always, it's hard to to get out of the stereotype and break those.
What was yours? What were you stereotyped as?
So I was, first of all, being a woman in this industry, like you said at the beginning, there's a lot of sexual abuse, sexual assault. There's so much of that. So it's like, that's one of the battles you're dealing with every day. Whereas my male counterparts didn't even have to think about that. There's also the just the double standard with women and how women have to look in certain events and how they have to always be, wearing high heels or this and that, and walk the subway with high heels to go to work and their feet are killing them. There's just so much, the city isn't built for women. We're not visible. We're invisible in a lot of, a lot of tech, a lot of things that are built for men and not thinking, and they're not thinking of women. And for me, it was more, all the roles that I was being pigeonholed were either sexualized, or when I came to the US, it's that I had to have this certain, hot, sexy, spicy, salsa, dancing, Latin, accent and like all these things. And so it was hard for me to be taken seriously. When I first got, recently I got a job, and I started seeing that the parts that they were writing for me were just very basic and not for the males or the white females. And I knew that there was an issue, and I started sort of advocating for myself with the producers and the writers, and saying, like, I really think that that my part is like, I'm like an object, like I'm a little object that you have in the storyline, and that's an issue because I'm not here to be a token. And I think that there's an issue when you hire a Latina to sort of tick the box of like having a Latina on your show, but you're not writing for me to be a fully fleshed human being.
No.
not only that, I then found out that I was being paid less than all of my white counterparts. And so then I had, all of that conversation. And so it's like, I wish I could just go to work and do my job. And there's so many other fires as women that we're having to, deal with, and so many other mountains every single day that our male counterparts don't have to deal with.
Were you able to change that? Were you able to get fair pay and get a better script?
Yes, it's been exhausting because every single time I have to sort of like, they do great and then they kind of like go back to writing differently. But I've also, but I did get the pay to be equal. But I know that,
See, that's the thing about not understanding systemic bias. So, in Mexico, the bias towards the man must be the provider, the man must be the important one, the woman is all the other things, and she can work if she wants to, but she still has to be all those other things in life. We feel it every day, every hour of every day, but the men don't even know it's there. And that's kind of in a way where we started this conversation, recognising that we're both privileged people by education and family support, and yet we act on that privilege. And one of the very compelling things I do with leaders who are not even aware of what they're doing is it's called the privilege walk. And you line them up in a row and you ask 20 questions. Something like, have you ever had an advantage around education? Have you ever been judged for your gender? Have you ever been discriminated against because of your colour? And every time you answer yes to a discrimination question, you take a step back. And every time you talk to advantage, you take a step forward. And at the end of it, out the front are the white, privileged, educated, well-to-do white males. And then you say, I've got $2,000. We're going to count down on the count of 3, fire a gun, and you're all going to race for the money and see who gets there first. And way back is the woman of colour with a disability, and the white man from a privileged family gets the money, and you simply ask, do you actually think you deserve their money? Have you actually done anything to get it? You just were 30 paces ahead of someone of colour, someone of gender, someone from another country. So just think carefully about your privilege, that when you get that prize, did you really earn it?
And also, are you willing to speak up for the people who aren't getting,
Correct. And bring them forward.
Bring them forward.
Which is a big thing around how we're paid.
Yeah. I think that's also why, I knew that having, International Women's Day, having this conversation with you was going to be so exciting, because I knew that we have many concerns that are similar, and, we want, all these things. And I know that in our, each of us in our separate worlds are obviously are doing it. And I know that, we don't have that much time left, but I would want to talk perhaps a little bit about, what I mean, I guess you touched upon it a little bit. What motivates you, or what do you think the motivation for Homeward Bound is now? Because I know that when it started, it was different. You also talked about how many people you use the feedback. That I love that you said you wanted all this feedback, and you got a lot of feedback the first time, and then with the second trip. And what is the mission of it now as you see it?
Well, I want you to imagine this beautiful blue planet of ours, and then I want you to imagine around that planet this incredibly beautiful, fine gossamer gold thread that's interconnected like the web of the most magnificent creature you can imagine around the planet. And that's my visual representation of Homeward Bound. It's 10,000 women globally connected with the same approach to leadership, more enlightened approach, the sense of collaboration and inclusion, with the skill to bring people in to solve the problems, who don't compete or diminish each other, providing advice and support for a future that we all want. My motivation, by the way, is I have effectively 4 babies, and my babies are 44, 40, he's 6'9", he lives in New York, 40, 34 and 31. I was about to say 28. And they're all incredibly different people, from street artist to builder to business person to filmmaker. And I know that this decade will be the decisive one for our species. And I want to do everything I can while I live to make it a little more stable, a little more secure, a little more sustainable. So I reckon I'm going to just keep going. And my icons are people like Jane Goodall and Sylvia Earle, and people in their 80s and 90s who don't stop, keep contributing. What about you?
Oh, wow.
What's your big, honest motivator?
Yeah, I love that. I think I can assume that you will keep working until you're 80. Until I am of the mind. I love there's a lot of ageism in the world, but I think that if we really used our communities wisely, we would gain so much from the young as well as the older. So yeah, all these things that we're talking about. Just also, it makes me excited to keep growing as a woman, to keep becoming wiser and older with the years, and sort of and also seeing the the new ideas come up, and being flexible and all of that. To me, my motivator, I guess, is really, like you said, because of having kids now. I do have a feeling of like where they're stepping into and how I'm affecting the world that they're going to step into. And so, I dream of a place that's safer for my daughter to work in, and where she won't be, silenced, or, all these things that I felt, growing up, that I think that I perhaps have, not only in like the way that I bring her, and I sort of help her with her education, and I help her grow, but ultimately not only her, but just, more than just her, because I also have a son. So, who will I bring?
What's his name? What's his name?
Luca. He's 2.
Luca and Gianna.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's just becoming realized as a woman, as a career, my career, and also inside of me, sort of growing emotionally, intellectually, and then I think that'll automatically change what I give out, what I bring out to the world. But I'm so happy to have met you through, through Acciona. I am, I just can't even imagine that dream that you had, and how, I saw that in one interview you said that when you turned around and you told your husband that you saw this boat and, all these women, and then he said, okay, I love that. What a beautiful dream. What are we going to have for breakfast?
Yeah.
So funny.
And then my business partner, when I told him, he said, over my dead body. So, yeah, it was the first woman I spoke to who said, I like it. I've loved talking to you, Karla. It's a real joy. I feel like I'm looking, frankly, at a younger version of myself.
Oh, wow.
You're a wonderful energy, a wonderful spirit in the world. And I hope that we stay connected. It's been a joy talking to you, and I'm amazed that Acciona is the glue that brought us together. And may our voices carry out and be a big warm blanket to women in many places.
Yes, and may we continue to use, like you said, the privilege that we have to sort of bring more women and to be more inclusive, and to give them a huge hug on International Women's Day. And I don't know if you read any questions, but I know that.
No, I have been asking, but we didn't get any. So other than the wonderful observation from you at 1336, should I keep talking?
I said, I don't know. Should I? We lost her. Oh,
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. All right. Well, Fabian, I send you so much love, so many hugs, and thanks to everybody who's been listening. Happy International Women's Day. And, thank you for staying tuned to this conversation. And you guys can ask us questions on my Instagram, and I can definitely get that to Fabienne as well. Thank you.
Big hugs.